This week, we discuss what are the greatest Catholic novels of all time. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a patrician, Charles Coulombe.
Patrician. Now, is that referring to my obvious adoration of St. Patrick or to my assumed social status?
Why can't it be both?
Well, okay, I can see that. St. Patrick himself was a Roman patrician, hence the name. He wasn't actually Irish, you know.
Right.
No, in fact, you know when the first St. Patrick's Day parade was in New York City?
I don't know, the 20s? When?
1778, and it was put on by the Loyalist Regiment, the Volunteers of Ireland.
1778. Wow.
Yes, indeed. And if I can find it, they were led by Lord Rawdon, mostly Catholic, and they had a song for St. Patrick's Day. I don't know the tune, but I do know I can pull up the words, which are kind of interesting. This was in 1780, a St. Patrick's Day song. Here it is. Success to the shamrock and all those who wear it, be honor their portion wherever they go. May riches attend them and store of good claret, for how to employ them sure none better know. Every foe surveys them with terror, but every silk petticoat wishes them nearer. So Yankee, keep off, you'll soon learn your error, for Paddy shall prostrate with every foe. This day, but the year I can't rightly determine, St. Patrick the vipers you chase from the land. Let's see if like him we can't sweep off the vermin who dare against the sons of the shamrock to stand. Hand in hand let's carol this chorus, as long as the blessings of Ireland hang o'er us. The crest of rebellion shall tremble before us, like brothers while thus we march hand in hand. St. George and St. Patrick, St. Andrew, St. David, together may laugh in all Europe in arms. Fair conquest her standard is o'er their heads waved, and glory has on them conferred all her charms. War's alarms to us are a pleasure, since honor our danger repays in full measure. And all those who join us shall find we have leisure to think of our sport, even in war's alarms. So there you go. You heard it here first, unless you were there in 1780.
Well,
Which might have been, I don't know.
some of your relatives, maybe.
Yeah, some of my relatives might have been there. You bet. A St. Patrick's Day song. I don't know, that's making me feel awfully wistful for the old sop. I was there last year at this time. You know, of course, even with the recent Americanized St. Patrick's Day in Ireland, it's still, especially if you get out of Dublin, where they're, you know, Dublin is very American on this day. But you get out to the countryside, and it's much more the way it was. Really a marvelous thing to think about, dear old Ireland. But we have something in the States that they don't have, and that's corned beef and cabbage.
That's right. Don't you forget it.
You bet. I'm proud of it. You should be so too.
All right. Anything else going on other than St. Patrick's Day?
Oh, of course, because St. Patrick's Day is really tomorrow, Monday. But, and that's when you realize that today's show is going to be a St. Patrick's Day gift to all of our viewers. A touch of the old sod, a bit of the shamrock, sort of a visual shot of Jameson's.
No visual shot of Jameson's.
That's right. No water, no ice, neat, maybe a triple shot. A triple Jameson's quickly tossed down, and then the glass refilled.
Okay.
Well, it's nothing. It's nothing that the liver can't handle on St. Patrick's Day. But the funny thing is that in the LA area, anyway, where once upon a time, I can remember that if you went to an English or Scots pub on St. Patrick's Day, you'd have the place all to yourself, which was great. Uh, I remember a couple of years, your brother and Kirk Mulhern and Mike Dykes himself and some others went to the late lamented John Bull in Pasadena. And we had the place all to ourselves. It was empty. Wonderful. We could sing Irish songs all we liked. And the employees were happy because they were making some money. But now, every English, Scots, Welsh, any pub or restaurant that can come up with an excuse to push St. Patrick's Day does. The Tam O'Shanter is big on St. Patrick's Day.
Probably can't get a seat. You probably have to make a reservation several days in advance or something for that.
Or just stand. But yeah, it's and Beckham Place, if you remember, it used to be in Pasadena. They the last few years of their existence, the Beckham Grill was the same way, and they were English. I mean, they weren't even Scots like the Tam, but they made no pretense. They just yanked in all the Irish and once a year Irish in particular drinkers they could get. England, Ireland, Scotland, what's the difference? Pay up. Here's your drink. Go sit in the corner and shut up, and then empty your drink and buy more.
Did you ever go to Griffin's for St. Patty's Day?
Not for St. Patty's Day. I've gone for a lot of other things. I've gone for a lot of wakes at Griffin's.
Right.
That became. I mean, we wait my mother, we wait Brother Leonard Mary, we wait several other people. It became the go-to wake place.
It's interesting.
Well, you finish up with the rosary, and usually a Cabot and Sons, and then when you're done with the rosary, you go down to Griffin's. You drink the dear departed's health. The health isn't quite the word, salvation, I guess. And that was where we would do the eulogies, not at the rosary. And of course, as the night went on and the craythur flowed, the eulogies would become ever more elaborate, sometimes entirely incomprehensible. Sometimes making no sense whatsoever. Ah, your dear mother. Sure didn't I serve with herself in World War One? I don't know that would really be. Ah, sure it were. Let's have another dram here. Pass it on then.
Okay.
You begin to wonder about the quality of reminiscences from some people, whether they actually knew the dear departed at all. Ah, he was a wonderful man. We're here for my mother. Oh, that's what I said. Wonderful woman she were. So, well, wakes get funny when they get far in the evening, as people who just at the restaurant join in with reminiscences of someone they never knew. Sure, I'll never forget your dear old uncle at school, sir. He actually went to school in South Africa. Ah, yes, indeed. Oh, God rest him. That kind of thing.
I see.
But at any rate, that is tomorrow. So after watching the show, a lot of our viewers will go staggering off to the green-themed waterhole of their choice and meditate upon what they're going to hear tonight, or that we're doing tonight. They're going to meditate upon it deep in their cups. So you never know what will come out of that. But on Wednesday is St. Joseph's Day. And that means St. Joseph's table. Now, are you guys going to St. Peter's Italian?
I don't think so. We might just go to Holy Angels, but we'll see.
St. Peter's Italian is hard to beat. I mean, when I was living in LA, that was my go-to place every year.
We'll see. There's some safety concerns, but
Safety? Why didn't God made the metro?
yeah, yeah, that's not so much safe. Have you ever ridden
Yeah.
on the metro?
Oh, sure, many times. And I've never been pulled over for drunk driving on the metro.
Oh, okay.
So I could load up on as much Dago Red at St. Peter's as I wanted, stagger out of the metro and come home.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed your Dago Red and really loaded up on it.
Oh, you want Dago Red? Who doesn't like Dago Red?
I can't think of anyone who doesn't like Dago Red.
They'd be awful. And then you can stick a candle in the bottle.
Right. Yes. Correct.
For that bohemian look.
That's right.
Would you rather your house looked like a well-run house of an up-and-coming young couple, or a bohemian crash pad in Greenwich Village, say about 1958? What would you prefer?
A bohemian crash pad from 1958?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Okay. A bohemian is poets, actors, writers of that era living in, say, Greenwich Village, the French Quarter in New Orleans, North Beach, San Francisco, places like that. A crash pad is a place where people of the same fraternity felt comfortable just showing up and hanging out and passing out on the floor. Crash pad.
Wow.
You never
okay.
heard that phrase?
I've never heard that phrase. Maybe different crowd.
You've never heard of a crash pad?
No, I never have.
All right. Well, before we get to our questions, I will ask our audience if they have ever heard the phrase crash pad, and if they've ever actually crashed at one on a regular basis,
I'm
or
sure,
maybe just once at a time.
I'm sure 110% of our audience is going to be outraged that I don't know what crash pad is. I don't really care.
Well, back up. I'm sensing you're getting defensive.
I am not getting defensive.
Well, good, because you know what to be defensive about. I mean, look, you're a man of good family and gentle breeding. Why would you even know about what a crash pad was?
You're right. Yeah, I know. That's what I've been thinking this entire time. Thank you for stating my thoughts.
You're welcome. So you see, you have absolutely nothing to feel, worried about.
That's right.
No one's judging you.
That's right. Okay.
That's important to bear in mind. You're not being judged here. We have been managed to construct within the off the menu family a judgment-free space where both performers and audience can feel free to be who they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you judge our audience?
No, not at all.
Do they judge you?
Actually, I judge my audience when they I will judge my audience sometimes. I will when someone has never commented on the channel before but decides to finally comment for the first time and be super annoying. I do judge that.
Okay, I see where you're coming from.
I remember one for you. I'll never forget the one where it's like, hey, Charles, hugest fan, biggest fan in the world. Been listening to the podcast for 5 years, but I've lost all respect of you after what you said about your opinion on the canonization of John Paul II.
Okay, well.
See, you're getting a little. There's a little something there. There's a little something there.
Well, yeah, but see, that's judgmentalism. He judged first.
Oh, he judged first.
Yeah,
Okay. So this is like Rambo First Blood, and it's like, okay, well,
exactly.
you drew first.
You do first blood, and if you draw first blood, you lose. You judge first, you lost. That's how it works. Yep. You
Hmm.
judge first, and you know the thing that I really say that it does I have to admit it does annoy me a little bit. The years ago, my parents knew an Anglo-Canadian made the comment in my hearing to my dad that the two institutions, he said, the only two institutions I've really believed in, the church and the monarchy, have failed me. And my dad looked at him and said something I've never forgotten.
What?
They've failed you.
Hmm.
Now, the reason why he put it in those terms, they've failed you, is the implication that the man was so wonderful that the church and the monarchy should simply be everything he wanted them to be. And that in not being what they wanted them to be, he, being by definition a wonderful person, had somehow been failed. But was he the most devout Catholic? Was he the most loyal subject he could have been?
Yes.
Oh, well, all right, we answered that question. Okay, fine, that was judgment too. You judge him, but no, I mean, I have to admit, it's something I have to look at myself. Is when things upset me, and I go to the point of thinking, oh well, the church has simply not been, the country has not been everything I want it to be. Oh, boo-hoo, poor me. Now, that doesn't mean there haven't been any real problems. Of course there have. There have been terrible problems. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's very difficult, but we have to try to separate personal annoyance from objective problems. And we have to try not to take them personally, because the problems in the church, the problems in the country don't just affect me.
Yeah.
And they weren't planned to annoy me personally. Although God knows they do. Anyway, so that is the way it is.
Okay. What's the I like the term that you said several months ago. What, you're a martyr to minor inconveniences?
Yeah, a martyr to minor pain. Yeah,
Or a martyr to minor annoyances? Something like that. But I don't know.
I am.
I think
Minor annoyances.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Let's finally get to it. So we had the discussion topic of asking people what do they think is the greatest Catholic novel of all time.
Yes, indeed.
And we're gonna jump right into the most popular answer. And
Which was?
it was Brideshead Revisited.
Oh,
One of the our favorite publishers, Aruka Press, said Brideshead Revisited. There are a lot of other posts on Twitter. Everybody, just a huge percentage. I would say maybe 100 people, either posted on Brideshead Revisited or clicked like on a Brideshead Revisited post. What do you think, Charles? Is this worthy of being considered in this regard?
yeah. Yeah, I definitely would. I mean, Brideshead Revisited is the story of this kind of Arab East middle class kid who goes to Oxford and falls in with a member of a decaying aristocratic Roman Catholic family. And they're far from perfect for a lot of reasons. And yet, in the end, they do become a sort of means of grace for him. And it's messy. But that's what real life is like, messy. So his friend Lord Sebastian Flight's mother is very devout and very annoying in some ways. So much so that her husband, who they've not divorced, but her husband lives with his mistress in Italy, and has basically left the church. He's living in sin, quite literally. And of course, she's tried to keep the family on the straight and narrow with varying amounts of success, partly because of their failings, partly because of hers. And the fellow Charles Ryder comes in the midst of all this. And there's all sorts of moral ambiguity, but it's a moral ambiguity that comes out of real life. And without wanting to go into details, really, the real life is messy, but it's also filled with grace ultimately for those who persevere, at least persevere in trying to find the truth. Even the more scandalous figures like Sebastian, in the end, find their way, as does Lord Marchmain, his father, who it's interesting that I've heard that Sir Laurence Olivier, who played Lord Marchmain in the 1980, whatever it was, 1983 TV movie, he came into the church on his deathbed. One of the most affecting scenes in the book and in the movie is Lord Marchmain's deathbed reconciliation. So the joke amongst those of Lord Olivier's friends that knew all about it was that the performance had been the dress rehearsal for his own actual reception.
Okay. Interesting. Showing the book cover on the screen, and it says heartbreakingly beautiful, the 20th century's finest English novel. And that blurb is written by the LA Times, which is interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Next is a little bit more of an obscure novel, I feel like. Roy James recommends Kristen Lavren's daughter.
Kristen Lavin's daughter, yeah.
Yeah, by Sigrid Undset.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about this one, Charles? I personally am not familiar with this book.
Well, it's the story of a lady in medieval Norway, Catholic Norway, who is born to a noble family. She marries someone of her station. She has various problems. It's a trilogy. She ends up, after her husband dies, I believe she ends up as a nun, if I remember correctly. But it revealed a great deal of what medieval Norway had been like to a great many readers. So, you know.
Okay. When was this written?
It was written in the 20s, I think, but let's of the last century. But let me just make sure I know what I'm talking about. Kristen Lavran's daughter. Yeah, first published the individual novels. The Wreath, published in 1920. Husfru, the Wife, published in 1921. And Cross at the Cross, published in 1922. And she has problems with her parents and her husband, and then she ends up, as I say, as a nun.
I know the author has been. I'm familiar with the author. I know we sell one of her biographies actually by one of your favorite people, Father Aidan Nichols. who wrote a biography of her.
Yes,
So it's interesting.
and she has a lot of. I mean, it's again like Brideshead Revisited. Uh, none of the people in the novel are saints.
Hmm.
At least not till the end. They have all sorts of sins they wrestle with, but they also really believe. And that, you know, as with Brideshead Revisited, there's the intricate interface in a then Catholic culture between sin and grace,
Hmm.
and grace wins out in the end, at least for Kristen and some of her associates.
This cover says winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. Did she win for this, or was this something else?
No, I think she did win for that. But let's see again, so I make sure I know what I'm talking about. I hate it when I don't. Honors. Oh, what do you know? It looks like she's. They're talking about.
Beatification.
Yeah, and that's something. Anyway, yeah, for she won it in 1928, so presumably it was for Kristen Levensdatter.
Hmm. Okay, very good. All right, next one. Let's see. Drifting Wanderer says Canticle for Leibowitz. That's a
Well,
popular choice.
yes, and one I chose myself. And this the Canticle of Leibowitz is it's how do I put it? It's a science fiction novel. Uh, it's very how do I put it? Well, it's a meditation amongst other things. I mean, there's some fantastic elements in it, like the Wandering Jew and things like that. But um, it it basically deals with three stages in a post-nuclear Holocaust world in which the church is one of the few things that survived, in keeping with our Lord's promise that she would survive to the end. Um, the first part is called Fiat Fiat Homo, Let There Be Man, and that is the story of well, it's set a few hundred years after the flame deluge, and society and technology are very much like the Dark Ages, so called. Then the middle part of the book, Fiat Voluntas Tua, things have gone on, and it's a bit more like uh, Tudor England meets the early electrical age. And they have the beginnings of a Church of England like split in the
Hmm.
church. Only the center of things is North America because Europe was pretty much wrecked in the flame deluge. And the Pope lives in North America. The papacy moved. The third and last section is called Fiat Voluntas Tua, let it be done according to thy will, in which things have progressed to a little bit beyond where they are now. So they've just developed interstellar flight, but that's nice. But on the other hand, they are just about to have another nuclear war. Mankind doesn't learn, and that's one of the lessons in it that comes back over and over is that we don't really learn.
Hmm. So how is the narrative handled there? So it sounds like it's over a period of several hundred years.
Yes,
So there's
and
no
it's
characters, or are there characters?
oh, there are lots of
Oh,
characters,
okay.
lots of characters. It's filled with them, and they're very well drawn. And again, they're very conflicted. Some of them, and none of them are perfect. Um, they try. Some of them fail. Some of them don't try very hard. Some of them are malicious. It's again the thing about the Catholic novel that you'll see, and I think We'll see if it varies. But you'll notice one thing all of these things have in common is an attempt to look at the human condition in the light of the faith. So while on the one hand, nobody in any of these novels comes across as perfect by any stretch, on the other hand, there's always the possibility of grace, of redemption, if they choose it. If they choose it.
Hmm. All right, next one I'm going to put on the screen. Chris Lawrence recommends The Power and the Glory, a novel by Graham Greene. Popular choice?
Well, see here again. It's set in Mexico during the Cristero War, and it centers on a priest who's basically not very good. He's a whiskey priest. He's a drunk.
Hmm.
You know, there's a lot of terrible things you could say about him, but he is also very faithful and refuses to give in.
Hmm.
So he's again a contradiction, a paradox. And Graham Greene loved dealing with characters like that, possibly because they reflected himself very much. Um, you know, your belief can be completely orthodox, and you're yourself a fragile vessel.
Right.
And so, very often, Greene's characters struggle with various temptations. They very often lose, but sometimes they don't.
Hmm. All right. Next one. Pascal says all of Robert Hugh Benson's books about the Protestant Reformation in England are remarkable. They weave historical figures into the novel and bring to life the persecution of Catholics. I can't recommend them highly enough. Come Rack, Come Rope is excellent. And
Come Rack, Come Rope, By What Authority, The King's Achievement. These are all great. And they are, the torture scenes, and one or two of them are excruciating. But they certainly give the flavor of what it was like living in that period. And it's something that, you know, every period of persecution the church has ever undergone has certain similarities in the sense that people are living their normal lives. And then bit by bit, the situation around them gets weirder and weirder. And then finally, they have to make a choice about what direction they're going to go in.
hmm.
And of course, for England, as for the rest of Northern Europe, that question was, will you stick with the old religion or join the new? Now, that was the higher up you were in society, the harder and nastier the results. And one of the things in Benson's novels is that very often those who are the most loudmouthed and boastful about how they'll, hold on to the faith regardless, end up losing it. And the quiet, scared, weak ones end up as the martyrs who hold on.
Hmm. All right. Actually, I the talk. I've heard a lot of talk about of all of Robert Hugh Benson's books. I hear the most talk about Lord of the World.
Yeah.
Would you say
And
what would you say about that one?
well, Lord of the World, I would actually pair with his least read book, which is called The End of All. Uh, Lord of the World is a dystopian novel like 1984, like Brave New World, etc. And it's basically a story of the last times of the Antichrist. Uh, the the end of all is the opposite. It's a sort of utopian novel about what a Catholic state would be like in the present had there been no Protestant revolt, etc. And the centerpiece is a priest who's a friend of the protagonist, and he's accused of heresy. And he refuses to give it up because he refuses to believe that it's heresy. and so he goes to his death um, convinced that he's Orthodox, and it's done very ambiguously for a reason, which is it forces you to think these things through. And in a certain sense, he embraces his death because he believes that one day he'll be found Orthodox.
Okay. Next, we've got recommendation for Gene Wolfe, and it looks like a series from him. The Sword and Citadel, Shadow and Claw, and the Book of the New Sun. Are you familiar with these, Charles?
I'm not. I've read other of his, especially The Devil in the Forest, and from his other books I've read, his faith is definitely present in all of them. And again, it goes to the mixed nature of human life, and the interaction between grace and free will.
All right. All right. Next one. So Michael Knowles even jumped into this thread. He recommended I Promessi Sposi.
Sposa.
Sposa. Okay, he said
Promessa sposa.
Okay. So that is, I think, Italian for the betrothed, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That is correct. By Alessandro Manzoni.
I
First
haven't
came out in
heard
the
of this one.
1820s.
Is this a
Well,
popular book?
It certainly was, and it certainly should be. Basically, the how do I put it? Again, like all the others we've been dealing with. Well, first it was written by Alessandro Manzoni, who was the leading Italian romantic writer. You know, like Chateaubriand, like Novalis, like Sir Walter Scott in France, Germany, and Britain. Alessandro Manzoni was the leading Italian romantic. And this couple go through all sorts of horrors to try to get married. It's really, really difficult. And the couple are they're going to get married, and this couple in a poor village are going to get married. The priest is going to perform it, but then the local nobleman wants it for himself, and he has a couple of thugs threaten the priest, who agrees not to do it. Well, that's the jumping off point. They go through all sorts of rigmarole, and you run into all sorts of characters, clerical and lay. Some of them very good, some of them very bad, a lot of them in between. And once again, grace versus free will. You know, you see near saints in the betrothed, and you see cowards, and you see the strength of love and loyalty outshining all of it. And everybody intensely human. You know, I think it's fair to say that the reason why these Catholic novels all seem to go back to the same notions is because, and you see it with Lord of the Rings, although it's not part of the conversation, is because they all deal with the realities of human life, which, unlike some non-Catholic writers have, are not all dark and horrible, and neither are they all bright and wonderful. They're very mixed, just as the fallen human nature is. And that includes the baptized Catholic.
All right, we're gonna jump into a list from Anthony Iselin, who's a very prominent writer right now. He's gave us a list, so he also recommends *The Betrothed* by Manzoni. There's Kristen Lavransdatter. How do you say that? I always mispronounce it.
Lavransdatter, Kristen Lavransdatter.
All right, and then *The Viper's Tangle* by Mariac. It's interesting.
Mauriac, Francois Mauriac, great French writer. I'm a great fan of Anthony Eastland's work, by the way. So pay close attention to what he says here, ladies and gentlemen.
Quo Vadis was a very, very popular recommendation as well, and worth talking about, I think. Charles, what do you have to say about Quo Vadis?
Well, it's a story of a pagan Roman and a Christian in prison. Well, not in prison, but she's a Christian princess who's sort of a prisoner. And they fall in love against the background of Nero's persecution of the Christians. And it's the phrase "Quo Vadis" comes from the famous story of Saint Peter, who was about to leave Rome during this very persecution, and he sees Christ coming toward him. So it says, "Quo vadis, Domine?" Where are you going, Lord? And he says, "Rome, Peter, to be crucified again." So Peter turns around and gets crucified, and that, and again, it's I sound like a broken record, but it's the perennial human condition set against an extraordinary historical setting. Just like the power and the glory is set against the Cristero Wars.
All right. Let's take a look at some of his other recommendations. The Gaze of Jesus. I haven't heard of that one. Diary
Who's
of
it by?
Bakeli.
I don't know it.
Diary of a Country Priest by Bernanos. That's a prominent
That
author.
George Bernanos. Yeah, that I know. And it's the same thing. It's this priest who's assigned to a country parish in France. He's not the most remarkable individual. He tries very hard. So much of what he tries to do ends up as a disappointment. And of course, in the end, it turns out he's dying of a disease. But it's grace and free will.
All right. The Clown by Boel.
I don't know it.
And then obviously Brideshead Revisited by Waugh. The End of the Affair by Green.
I do know that.
And finally, actually one of the very few Chesterton recommendations, The Man Who Was Thursday. Not a lot of people mention Chesterton.
No. Well, he's not best known for his novels anymore.
Yeah.
But The Man Who Was Thursday is about a group of anarchists. And that Thursday is his code name.
All right. Moving on, we've got actually not so Teodoro. He says, I've not read much of it all, but from what I've gathered, it seems to me that The Divine Comedy by Dante is the best Catholic novel of all time. I would say this because it explicates Catholic dogma through a fictional journey during around the end of the Golden Age of the Middle Ages. Charles, what say you? I'm surprised not more people didn't recommend The Divine Comedy.
Well, it's because most people don't think of it as a novel, and I can understand that, but I suppose it is. And again, without wanting to beat the same old drum once more, but what is it about? Well, it's about grace and free will. Once again, examining every possible element of life, the damned, the suffering, and the saints.
All right, here's one for you, which perhaps you could see coming. Helvicio says, I'm going to go with the correct answer. Don Quixote by Cervantes, the one-handed man of Lepanto. It is still the most influential novel in world literature. I love the story of how one man has become so infatuated with chivalric romances that he attempts his own knight errantry in early modern Spain, much to the amusement of all. But as reality smacks him more and more in the face, he comes to his senses and at the end dies a perfect Christian death. What say you on Don Quixote, Charles?
Well, it's a lot of fun. It's a picaresque novel, as they say. But yeah, he he embodies the chivalric dream. He does get smacked around quite a bit, but he does become ever more and more a real knight. And at the end, his madness and reality almost fuse. I mean, Sancho Panza does end up running a province. So it it certainly is. It's a fun novel, and yet it does have a very strong point because even his delusions are taking people at their very best. You know, is when he
Right.
addresses the sluts in this tavern as good virgins,
Right.
and they they laugh hard because that's the opposite of what they are. Mm. But because he sees in them more than anyone else does, especially with Dulcinea. Um, in the end, she becomes a lot more than she was. Sancho Panza becomes more than he was, and he does indeed die a perfect Christian death.
What do you think of what Leon Gautier said about it, the author of Chivalry? I remember his words. I forgot exactly what he said, but he seemed to suggest that this marked the end of chivalry, the end of knighthood and the like. So I got the
Yeah,
impression he wasn't too fond of it.
no, but I don't think it's an inaccurate description because it did become the chivalric ideal did become for quite a while the object of ridicule, but of it wasn't because of Don Quixote. It was the time. Remember that knights in armor were driven off the battlefield by gunpowder during this era. Uh, I'm pulling up right now the last lines of Chesterton's Lepanto, where he makes a direct reference to Don Quixote. Um, and it ends, he was talking about a poem celebrating the victory of the Holy League over uh, the Turks. And at the very end, he says, Cervantes on his galley sets the sword back in the sheath. Don John of Austria rides homeward with a wreath. And he sees across a weary land a straggling road in Spain, up which a lean and foolish knight forever rides in vain. And he smiles, but not as sultan's smile, and settles back the blade. But Don John of Austria rides home from the crusade. Um, Gautier is right, I think, in some ways, but perhaps not in others.
All right. Perhaps the last of the serious recommend. Well, maybe not the last of the serious recommendations, but one last of the classic ones, I would say. Miranda says, I would say The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Wilde was decidedly complicated, but died a Catholic, and his work shows clearly how deeply Catholic he was at heart, despite his demons. Dorian Gray's the ultimate image of the effect of sin on the soul. It's deeply beautiful, horrifying, and witty all at once. Mm.
Well, that's certainly a very interesting point of view, and I can't say it's entirely wrong by any stretch. Uh, I mean, certainly Wilde was very much aware of the corrupting effect of sin on the soul. And yet, he always had a yearning after the faith. He had tried to convert when he was at university. His father wouldn't let him, and he often complained that had he been allowed to do so then, he wouldn't have gone down the roads he went.
Hmm.
Uh, his deathbed conversion was quite sincere, apparently, but uh, it was not unprecedented. In other words, there were elements, Catholic-esque elements in his work, in his writing, all the way through, despite his problems. So, yeah, okay, why not?
All right, another recommendation. Connor from Chicago, New Jersey's top food critic, says easy. Star Spangled Crown. Next question. And the patrons chided him quite hard, and I remember one of them called Connor a teacher's pet.
Shameless,
uh,
shameless. No, it's all right. I respect your deep scholarly taste and your beautiful insights.
yeah. So Charles's book, a simple guide to the American monarchy. That can you give us the elevator pitch? I guess that you'd say, Charles.
Well, basically, I wrote the thing to explore two different topics. Uh, one was the idea of Catholic monarchy divorced from any existing Catholic monarchy. In other words, uh, a friend of mine, Christophe Bouffon-Chazal, who's End of Democracy, Tumblr House Cell, had said to me, there is no single body of Catholic monarchist thought. There are several Catholic monarchisms divided nationally, which is true. But I sat down to try to figure out what they all had in common and then see if one could sort of apply them ex post facto to a wholly new creation. So that was one thing. And the other was, for a lot of Americans, their patriotism is all bound up with the idea that America is an idea rather than a country. But if the idea is flawed, well, there goes their patriotism. And I mean, I've actually heard people say things like that.
Mm.
So what I was looking at was, as it were, steps toward an American patriotism that was not connected to her current form of government.
Mm.
And those are the two big ideas I was dealing with. So in the book, basically the republic collapses, and I mean I did it in a very Deus ex machina way. I
Yeah.
needed to get rid of the republic, so I got rid of it,
Right.
and I needed a king, so I brought him in.
Right.
I very much doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that events could ever unfold the way they do in the book. But it was just a way to bring in a monarchy without having to go too much into how we got there and why, because I have no idea, frankly.
Mm.
But basically the president goes mad and she kills all the remaining members of the cabinet who hadn't resigned. So she wipes out the presidential line of succession, and then she gets killed herself in a shootout with the old guard at the White House. That leaves the Joint Chiefs in charge of the country. As I say in the book, they had unwittingly pulled off the country's first successful military coup d'etat.
Mm.
But now they had a problem because there's no way they could continue ruling the country this way. And they wanted to come up with a civilian authority they could surrender to that wouldn't have them executed for treason.
Mm.
And there was no real constitutional way they could do that. So they had the Lady of the Tiger. Well, they come up with the idea of a monarchy really on it as a fluke, and they ask the heir to the Jacobite claims to Britain to become the king, partly because he's extremely wealthy, and partly because he's used to dealing with politicians, and partly because his native country is so small that he's not likely to, be too affected by its needs in running ours. So he becomes king and he immediately sets to work. And in the beginning, he's very much like Franklin Roosevelt in terms of a lot of federal reorganization. But then, once he's achieved what he wants to, he decentralizes the thing the way classical Catholic monarchy was decentralized.
Mm.
And then from there, from the end of that narrative, we go to see how different elements of life, the arts, education, etc., the military, a lot of things, how they were in medieval Europe and Christendom, how they were adjusted in colonial days under the English, what they were like under the old republic, and what they are now under the new monarchy. So that's basically what Star Spangled Crown is about. It doesn't really have a plot per se. And the one of the funniest things to me in the book, I had a lot of fun writing it, but my narrator is my as yet unborn great nephew, who, well, you could tell in one section when he's writing about himself and his life, he was 10 years old when the monarchy came in, and at the time that he's writing, he's in his early 90s, late 80s. And it's kind of obvious when he writes an account of what his life had been like under the monarchy that he has a very, shall we say, elevated view, which the reader may not share.
Yeah.
When he, at the very end, he reveals that he is about to get the very lowest award in the honor system, the very lowest, and he's very excited about it. And he says that when he receives it, he's looking forward to it. He says, "Never in my life have I loved my king and felt my loyalty so much, and never have I felt so proud to be an American."
That's beautiful to me. I feel like that's classic in a sense, because it's embracing the small guy, and the small guy will feel that way,
Well, that actually was the point, because he really is sort of the everyman.
Yeah, exactly.
In the his description of his life under the monarchy, as I say, the king comes to power when he's a boy. He ends up getting a royal scholarship to go into the army as an officer. And of course, as he ages, the monarchy becomes more and more of an American institution. And it's sort of sealed when the king's youngest son dies fighting with the army. At about the same time, in the same war, a different place, that the narrator's favorite cousin dies. And this is something that actually happens in real life from time to time. When a prince dies in wartime, the people's sorrow for their own losses sort of merge with the royal families. And when I was writing the scene where he's just come from, his own cousin has died, and he's at Washington looking at the White House where the king and the royal family are on the terrace, and the prince's body has just been brought home from Liberia. And by this time, the whole Jacobite thing has become part of the American mythos. And so the crowd sings, it was all for our rightful king. And the king is overwhelmed with emotion. All he can say is, "My people, my very dear people." And the crowd are overwhelmed with emotion. And their personal losses and pains and his are all merged together. Things like that actually happen in history. It was simply a question of transporting it to an American scene. And I have to say, although in a lot of writing of the book, I grinned. Some of it I laughed out loud, but I almost cried writing that scene.
Right, of course.
Even though it had never happened, and isn't likely to.
But it talks about a quality of monarchy that is real, and it's personal, and yeah. All right. Yep. Yes.
We got anything else there?
We got one last one. We have one last one. Tampa Tobacconist says, He recommends, as one of the greatest Catholic novels of all time, Chow Mein Sandwiches and Me by Charles Coulombe.
Yeah, well, remember what I was saying earlier about grace and free will? In that particular novel, chow mein sandwiches are sort of an image of God's grace, of divine grace, which is so often resisted and refused by those blinded by sin. So obviously, only someone blinded by sin could turn up their nose at a chow mein sandwich.
I guess so.
Well, you know what I always tell you? If you accept my premises, my conclusions are easy.
All right. What I'm going to do, sort of impromptu, is I'm going to create So all these novels we talked about, we pretty much have all of them in the store, in the TumblrHouse.com bookstore that I manage. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to give 30% off for people who use the code Catholic Novels, as it appears on the screen right now. Enter in that code at checkout. You get 30% off your entire order, whatever you buy, not just these books, any books. This I'm going to provide a link in the description of the video as well, so you can just click that link, and this code will automatically be entered at checkout. And this will last until the end of May. So act now while the offer lasts. Batteries not included. Void were prohibited. Sorry, no CODs. Not an actor.
Are operators standing by?
Yeah, operators are standing by. Absolutely.
Okay.
So, all right. Yeah, so shameless plug there. That's going to be it for this particular episode. Give us some feedback on what you guys thought. Again, where these topic discussions sort of changes up the flow of each episode, and I'd really like to know if you guys are digging this, if you guys aren't digging this. Try to mix it up a little bit on the show here. So we really appreciate your feedback.
We don't want you to be too bored.
Oh, that reminds me. So next week's topic of discussion is going to be, what's your favorite style of church architecture? And which church do you think is the best example of it? So, for example, maybe say Gothic, right? And then it's, what's an example of Gothic? Cathedral of Milan.
Well, Notre Dame.
And Notre Dame. So stuff like that. Give us your feedback. We'll talk about it on the next episode. I don't know if it will be as in detail as we did this one, but it'll be interesting. Charles, do you have any last words?
Well, just that there needs to be more love, I would say.
There's a lot of love, but it's in all the wrong places, I would say.
Okay. All right, I can go with that. No, well, I wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day.
Absolutely. All right, what is it if it's Monday, Charles?
It is, don't help me, off the menu.
What about the soul you save?
May very well be your own.
See you next time, everyone.
God bless you all. God save Ireland, cried the heroes. God save Ireland, cried them all. Whether on the scaffold high or the battlefield we die, oh, what matter if for Ireland we fall. God bless you all. Take care.